So we're going to open up the back door of Bowser's Castle, but I don't actually want to use the back door of Bowser's Castle, because then we don't get to see the first half of the level, which is pretty cool. As we go into ostensibly what is World 8 here. I don't know, do I keep going with the embarrassing church stories? Is that just the whole theme of this Let's Play? I make a joke sometimes that I have nothing but contempt for you people, like I don't respect your time. It's actually not true. I actually try to make the Let's Plays as entertaining as possible, but sometimes I just enjoy telling the personal stories. I mean, what do you want from me? We were always encouraged to bring friends to, like, especially to the youth group, like maybe not to the actual church service, but to the youth group. We were always encouraged, like, yeah, just bring someone around. And the youth group, for what it was usually, it was pretty good times. As kids, a lot of times we would watch movies or, like, play games in the gym. There were a lot of board games, as I recall. You got to hang out with your friends. It was pretty cool. Like, youth group was actually pretty good most of the time. Because the people in charge of it were people whose jobs it was to, like, entertain kids. In a very Jesus-y way, but, you know, entertaining nonetheless. So we were always encouraged to bring friends, and it was something you would actually bring your friends to on a regular basis, because, oh yeah, hey, you know, we're all getting together to do this, or we're all getting together to do that. Yeah, I'll invite my friend over. And I remember having a conversation, because my friends and I at the time liked to play D&D. We played a lot of D&D back in the day. And I remember, like, is this something, like, youth group appropriate? Because I had vague recollections of, like, I wasn't aware of it in the 80s. I wasn't, like, open to awareness back then. I was too young. But in the 1980s, there was a big push from Christian, specifically, like, far-right political groups, that D&D was Satanist. And it was evil and bad. And if you let your kids play the D&D, they would all glorify Satan and then get gay married. I'm not exactly sure what the... This isn't going well! I tried to jump up and grab the top block so I could go along the top there and be okay, but didn't happen. Yeah, you know what? Thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure what the... Okay. Okay. I guess you can't go along the top block there because you go down along the bottom instead. Yeah, I'm thinking of it. I'm not really sure what the big Satanism scare in D&D was about. Like, I know that the game uses devils and demons as monsters, but the idea is you kill these monsters. Like, you slay them because you're heroes. I mean, I know I've read, like, the D&D chick tract. Like, ah, so-and-so knows how to use magic now, and... Yeah, I'm not actually sure. My parents never believed in that kind of stuff, and I don't think I ever knew any adults that did. I'd be interested to, like, ask one, like, what did you think was going to happen? But because of, like, vague memories of that scare from the 80s, and it now being the mid-90s, and thinking, like, is D&D, like, an appropriate activity to pitch to youth group? Like... Because I thought it was a great idea back then. Like, yeah, me and my friends are all playing D&D, and they're going to be coming to youth group. Like, hey, maybe we'll do this fun thing that we... Herpin! Cybrid! Hyper! Her! Okay. That shell got the vaguely racist German out of me. Is that what that was? That was... Like, if you're making fun of somebody who speaks German, and you're being really insensitive about it, I think those are the noises you would make. Let's not have that happen again. Oh, he hits the block for me. Excellent, thank you. This might be my favorite hidden exit in the game, by the way, in this level. We're not going to get it first. We're going to get the regular exit first. It's the worst regular exit, because you got to do basically the whole level twice. A lot of waiting in this level. You got to go through all of it twice. I don't really have an ending to that story. Just that I remember worrying that it wasn't an appropriate thing to suggest for youth group, and I don't think we ever did. I don't think we ever played D&D. I think a lot of youth groups now, though, like modern D&D, is a popular activity amongst even like preteens, even like going down to 11, 12 years old. I know a lot of schools have D&D programs or D&D clubs, like after school clubs. In fact, I got into a heated debate concerning one D&D club. There was a story that went out in it was a school club. Either a school club or like a YMCA kind of situation. I think it was a school, though. I'm pretty sure it was a school. Where a little girl was playing D&D, but she didn't talk a lot because she wasn't confident in her English. She's bilingual. Spanish being her first language. She's what's called an ESL student. ESL stands for English as a Second Language. And these students require extra attention. Obviously, if you're a teacher and you're in these situations, like there's certain things you're supposed to do and certain things you're supposed to avoid doing in order to make the student, first of all, be able to understand all of their lessons properly. And second of all, to become confident enough to speak English, even though it's their second language. And there are techniques you can use if you're a teacher in this situation, even if you don't speak the language. These techniques kind of have to be developed for any language. Spanish, obviously, is the most common in the United States, but the United States of America doesn't have an official language. Like, we all speak English here for the most part, but it's kind of, I don't know if unique in this sense, but it's rare for a country to not have an official language, and the United States doesn't. Despite what all the good old boys would have you believe. We don't have an official language. So when you're developing these kinds of programs for ESL students, you kind of have to develop them so they work no matter what the student's second language is. The basic idea, without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, is a student who is in an English-speaking school is going to pick up English just kind of through usage and osmosis anyway, and your job is to make them feel comfortable and confident to use English as much as possible in that setting, while also making it clear that they're still like allowed to speak whatever language they currently speak. The reason I know a lot of this is because my wife worked for many years in what's called a dropout prevention school. Can't prevent me from dropping out of this level right there. Heyo! A lot of high-risk students. So students from families that are homeless, or families where like they're in foster care, or their parents are in prison. These are students that are at high risk of dropping out of high school. And you can have one of these schools even at the elementary or middle school level. Like, they identify who these kids are very, very early. And instead of putting them into a mainstream school where they can just fail and get onto a path of crime and horribleness for their whole existence, I did the same thing. You know what the problem is I don't have an ice-cold, delicious Pepsi at hand. I don't have any Pepsi in the house. I have water, or I have milk, and that's it. That's all I have. And you cannot pour a glass of milk and let it sit there during a 2-hour recording session. That would just be gross. But my wife uses a lot of these ESL guidelines in her work. So I've been able to like flip through some of her ESL handbooks because some of it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's interesting subject matter for me. Just intellectually, I kind of like understanding like how people deal with this problem. But that, in the story in question here, in this D&D club with this Spanish-speaking girl, she's an ESL student, is not confident enough for English to participate in the social aspects of D&D as a game in her D&D club. So, the solution that the teacher came up with in this story is, okay, what we're going to do is, because it's a game of make-believe, and your character is different from you, like you, the player, distinct from you, the character. We're just going to say that your character doesn't speak Common, which is the language everybody speaks in D&D. It's the common language between all D&D characters, more or less. It's like, we'll pretend like your character doesn't speak Common, but we'll pretend like in this world that Elvish is Spanish, which I imagine her character would have had to be an elf for this to work. So the idea is, all right, so she's playing an elf character, and she's comfortable speaking Spanish, so she can speak as much Spanish as she wants at the table. And it's kind of a heartwarming story, right? Like, oh, this guy came up with a great solution. But knowing what I know, because I have decades of... See what I mean about this is a nice sneaky hidden exit? I love this hidden exit. And if you just dash off the side, you fall in this hole. Even sneakier. Love it even more. So combining my 20 plus years of experience running Dungeons and Dragons and what little I know about like the ESL guidelines that teachers and other educators, school employees are supposed to employ and follow, I know this is a bad idea. You're like to tell like, okay, your character can't speak common, but you can speak as much, well, and we'll pretend that Elvish is Spanish. Like these two things, they sound like they're a good idea to a layperson. And indeed, that's how my Discord chat kind of took it. Like, oh, this is a nice, heartwarming story about how this guy fixed the problem that this little girl was having. But from a D&D standpoint, it's never, ever, ever a good idea to impose a restriction on a character because that player has the restriction in real life. Like, just because you don't speak English doesn't mean your character can't speak Common, which was part of this teacher's solution. That's a terrible thing to do from a D&D standpoint, just because of the abuse that's possible there, and because it unevens the playing field for all the other players. Like, a better example, very, very common example, bad DMs, or first, I don't want to say bad DMs, inexperienced DMs get this wrong all the bloomin' time. Go ahead and read the subreddits and the whatnot. You'll see stories like this. Like, your character has, say, a high diplomacy skill, and the DM doesn't allow you to use it, and instead wants you to roleplay through a diplomacy situation. This is an extremely common situation that DMs, especially inexperienced DMs, including myself, until pretty very recently in my DMing career. Like, if you can't roleplay through this situation, it's not going to make sense. And we're not going to settle this with just a diplomacy check. Well, what that means then, in effect, is that if you aren't a very witty and charismatic player, you can never play a very witty and charismatic character. It's not possible. Because if your DM is going to educate all of these situations by who is actually the smooth talker, who can actually, like, has the wit to keep up with the NPC in the scene. So that's an example of why it's bad to determine a character's characteristics. Characteristics? Determine a character's capabilities based on what the player in real life is able to do. So I don't think clearing the back door counts as an exit, so we're going to skip that. And then from an ESL standpoint, I understand it's a bad idea because part of what, at least in the state of Florida, this might be different in, where do you live? Arkansas? That's a dumb state, but it might be different in Arkansas or Idaho or British Columbia. I think we own Iceland now. Iceland's a state. But in one of those other states, it might be different. But at least in Florida, and Florida has a very high number of ESL students, as you can imagine, because we have a lot of Spanish-speaking students here, from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, from Mexico, a lot of ESL students from Latin American countries. I don't super remember the exits here, but I'm pretty sure there are 2 of them. I think we just want to kind of go up from here. So this is dumb, what I've done here. But we made it. We're fine. Oh, yeah, see, there's the hidden exit. We'll get that one next. First, let's get the regular exit. One of the things you're not supposed to do is you're not supposed to, like, other a child in those situations. Like, if you have an ESL student, there are techniques that you're supposed to do in order to get them to understand their lessons and be confident speaking the language, but you're not supposed to make them feel like they're different from other students. Like, part of the process is there's nothing bad or wrong about speaking English as a second language. So we're not going to treat you as any different from the English-speaking children in the same classroom. And that's what a decision like this would do. Once you decide, okay, your character doesn't in the universe of the game doesn't speak the same language that everybody else speaks, it others that player, because now that player has an interaction with the game that other players don't. And I don't know if this is the case, but it also has edge cases like, okay, we've decided that Spanish is Elvish and that elves speak Spanish, but there's another player in the game who doesn't speak Spanish. Like, the player doesn't speak Spanish, but his character is an elf. Is he not allowed to speak Elvish? I don't know how, like, that kind of thing was decided. So we're going to take it up, and we're going to make steps. And we're going to make steps in a not stupid way. And we don't have to match exactly, but we've got to get close enough. Oh, I think we hit something. Did we... Ugh! You know what? I think we might be okay. Oh, I jumped too late. Well, alright. We'll try it again. But yeah, that's kind of a no-no when dealing with ESL students, is treating them, like, outwardly differently. And... like, when you have a group of students all doing the same activity, saying, okay, you do things one way and everybody else does things another way, that's othering, and it's alienating. And even if it's a heartwarming story, and even if it's a good solution that works at that table, it's still a bad technique, because if you kind of accept it as policy, like, oh, we have a way to deal with this situation, now we'll just do it this way every time it comes up, you're going to run into issues down the road. So we actually want to go... Ugh, that's... How am I going to get up that? Hold on, I think we can do it this way. Jump, jump, fly! Nope, nope, we're going to get this, though. It's going to be fine. Alright, so that's a good spot to have it. Hooray! We're in there. So yeah, when I heard this story, like, I immediately recognized what a bad idea this particular solution was. Like, the solution is... you sit down with... and I actually bounced this off Peanut, and she said this... like, she doesn't run D&D at schools, but she does a lot of similar kinds of group activities with students. And she said this is kind of what she would do, is, like, you would have... if possible, you have somebody who speaks the language on hand, which in her case, and I think in the case of the story as well, is the case, because the language is Spanish, and that's the second most common language in America, especially in Florida. Yeah, you tell the girl, you just reinforce the behavior of speak whatever language you're comfortable with. We want you to speak as much English as possible, but it's fine if you speak Spanish. And we're going to make sure that you understand how the game works, and we're going to make sure that, like, nobody makes fun of you, and we're going to make sure that everybody here learns as we play. Like, speak whatever language you want during the game, and you can learn English while we're playing, and the other students can learn Spanish while we're playing. And I think D&D is a great activity to learn languages if you have bilingual people, because it's a very vocal and very social activity. You can have lots of conversations about, like, vocabulary, and like, there's just a lot there, and you can solve the problem without actually changing the rules of the game in any way. I think that skips half the dungeon, right? Oh no, I think it just takes us to the next area. I feel like my cape should have killed him there. Oh, now we gotta wait for the jabroni to come back and get us through this wall. Oh no, oh there he is. Come on, get me through the wall. You know what? I don't want to do that castle yet. We gotta come around the other direction here anyway, so... Shoutouts to Red Silvers for sponsoring this video. If you liked the video and you want to see more, please tickle my thumb, leave a friendly comment, and ring my little bell.